Wow. Again, another home run. Coming up next, Rob Simmons. Give it up.
Good morning. Thank you for being here. This morning, I would like to talk just for a moment about expansion. The need for it, the imperative for it in our society, in our community, and the ability for us to engineer it. And I'd start out just reminding you of our background, that everything we know, everything we come from, is an expansive model, from the Big Bang to the nature of life being to reproduce and go forth, to early human civilization. We went right up to that mountain range, right up to that ocean, where the food would support us. And even when we get up to the empires that brought us our original science, laws, math, they were all dependent on an expansive model. And I think it's interesting that you get into the 20th century and we've started to run out of real estate. There's no more continents to discover. And both in our imagination and fiction, and both literally with exploration, we start turning beyond to the stars. And the cowboy western in Hollywood that became so popular, a lot of people attribute that popularity to the yearning for a frontier, for an edge that had been denied somewhat in the 20th century. And maybe even more telling is when we're with our friends and we're talking about things happening to us in our personal life. Look how you say things, the path I'm on, my personal journey, this threshold I'm crossing. The metaphors we even use in our own introspective life were dependent on that expansive model in a society that was always growing. And the problem with that is that expansion isn't the only part of our legacy. So is death, winter, economic decline. And we've had a period of stress and decline in this very community, and it's difficult. It's scary. And I would argue that it has a lot more to do, and there's a lot more at stake than a line on a GDP or on your tax forms. It begins to affect us in many ways. It begins to affect a myriad of choices, how people act interpersonally, whether they should stay in dispute or move on to greener pastures, whether they should be willing to take risks and innovate. And not just economically. That's going to show up culturally. It's going to show up in society. I don't think we should be surprised we're in a time of heavy political polarization. I think it's reflective on limited expansion and limited opportunities that wasn't true a few decades ago. And the worst thing about this, and the biggest danger about this, is that it can set in. It can be self-fulfilling. If you really truly get into haves and have-nots, you get corporativism. And it will prevent the natural Darwinistic nature of capitalism, that less the risks happen and the rewards happen. And I got personally fascinated with this because I'm from this area, and I'm from the manufacturing tradition in this area. All the friends and family I grew up with were involved in manufacturing. And I would argue that was a frontier. In the mid to late 20th century, it was booming, and it was chaotic and variant, and it was a frontier. And I've witnessed the somewhat decline of that, and I've witnessed it change. The other thing that had a big impact on me was I had the privilege of exporting products from this region all over the globe. And I watched firsthand the world get very small, very fast. And it was overwhelming. I'd come back to the same area year after year, and things were becoming homogenous. And it really got me interested in what is a frontier and what is the edge, and what does that mean? And the takeaway for me was that it's mental. It's always been mental. I don't want to talk a lot about conquistadors or the American West. One thing, those are not inclusive models. They came at the expense of indigenous people. But I'll point out this. It was only a frontier to them. I mean, we kind of chuckle now that Columbus did not discover the New World. There were already plenty of people here. The Vikings had already been over here. It was only because they didn't know any better, because they didn't know what was here, is that it was a discovery. And maybe a better way to point it out is to look at a farm in western Pennsylvania in the late 18th century. Now, if you went there and you said, well, is this the frontier? No, that's out west. This is established as farmland. And a few years later, you come back, and it's become well known that there are petroleum reserves under the ground. It's become well known that if you extract them and convert them, there is a market ready to pay for that product. And this is now ground zero frontier. There are wildcatters there. It's a whole new way of life. There's a whole new thing moving in, and elsewhere, in Texas and elsewhere. And so the point was, it was a mental barrier. It was a mental perception that prevented that frontier, not physical and not circumstances. Another example would be in technology. So that the cutting edge, the frontier for technology, was hardware dominated not 20 years ago. And you'll see how software outflanked that as the cutting edge, is where the expansion is. And that's where the frontier was. And most recently, in just a few years, you've seen content outflank software even, is where the real edge is and the real frontier. Again, the point is, it's a mental barrier. It's the collective understanding of where the opportunity was that defined it. There was nothing inherently limiting there except for a mutual understanding of where the market was. So, what do I mean by frontier? Specifically, it needs to be a well-known resource and a well-known converting opportunity. So you've got to have something that's there that you can exploit, and it's got to be clear how it can be taken to market and exploited. Number two, it has to be open to anyone willing to take the risk, with an emphasis on the word risk. It can't be for the club. It can't be for a select few. It has to be a true frontier open to everyone. And it has to be accessible. Lowering the threshold to that resource is a big part of much of the history we know. And so you have to lower the access as well. And I'm not saying in any way that we're supposed to all be on the frontier. In this room, maybe only a few of us really belong there on the edge with that risk. I'm saying we all depend on that expanding model. There has to be a frontier out there that we all individually take our place in the risk-reward spectrum. And I'll give one more example to kind of drive this home about a mental barrier. Go back to Pennsylvania, take any acre of land. In antiquity, if you went to that farmer and you said, well, how much are you going to get out of this land? The yield was known. It was only this much, and then I'm going to burn down the acre next to it and start with the field next. They didn't know to cultivate. Suddenly they know to cultivate the soil. They're getting many times more yield. Then they learn to rotate crops and irrigation and so on and so forth. Every time, there was nothing inherently limiting in that acre. It's just the mutual understanding of the opportunities that lie there. So if you look at where we are right now, we're doing a better job about communicating what we've got. We've got resources here. We've got assets. We got a legacy in manufacturing. We have a very dependable workforce. We've got extraordinarily rich institutions in education and arts, especially considering our size. So we've got the assets and the resources. And more than that, we've got convertible opportunities. I've heard firsthand outstanding concepts for reinvigorating furniture, for taking our music talent and commercializing it more. I personally have a real passion for environmental and sustainable practices in industry. And today, up here, we're hearing some excellent basis for convertible market opportunities out of this area. But we got to go beyond that. It's not a rifle shot. We have to communicate those opportunities, make them widely known, and the conversion capability of them. And we have to commit that anyone that comes in here can take advantage of that opportunity, and we got to make sure they get easy access. But the point is this: That doesn't take a lot of money. That doesn't take big buildings. It takes communication and commitment. And there's no reason we can't find the next reserve right under our feet, right here. There's no reason we can't take the same acreage we're in this community, and find our next frontier and expand our model. Thanks very much.